What's up guys, welcome to this channel. This is the second part of Diablo vs Godama chapters. Important message. Many of you haven't joined our Tensura fan page. Please consider joining it from the link given below. I will upload the next part within 5 days. So don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Now let's start our chapter. Mellies, who was Godama's secretary, was shocked. The scene of destruction was not something that the mind could easily comprehend. That was the degree that Diablo was outside of the norm in Mellies' mind. She had been monitoring Diablo from the security room, just as Headmaster Godama had ordered. And after having measured the energy, it had been unmistakably 7,000. Lower than I expected. He should not have much trouble in that case. She thought as she made the report to Godama. The result of this was the horrible sight beyond the screen. Since Mellies was examining the situation, she knew what was now happening to Godama. And yet, when put together with what she knew to be normal, it was nothing short of ludicrous. The destroyers that they were so proud of were ultra-powerful machines with energy up to 15,000, and there were 13 of them. It was overwhelming power. If anything, it seemed like too much to throw at the likes of Diablo. Mellies had been sure of Godama's victory the moment that Diablo fell into the pit. And yet this Diablo, who only had 7,000 in energy, he had easily defeated the 13 destroyers. And there was even more shocking information that made her tremble with fear. As she had watched them through her monitors for a while, and been able to measure the combat data, she had come to the conclusion that Diablo's energy was constantly at the same level. But for the numbers to stay exactly the same throughout the whole time, that was just not normal. For instance, a single punch from a destroyer would have to have energy that is less than 15,000. They had found out through a mountain of combat data, that it was usually about 0.2%. This was obvious, as energy was the combination of all of the person's abilities. Mobility, reflexes, attack power, defense power, intelligence, mental strength, luck, uncertain element, all of these and more were combined to create this number that was energy. The actual energy that was used in an attack was very low. This had all been established even before they began their research. However, Diablo's numbers were at 7,000. It was impossible. How can this happen? It doesn't make any sense. I will not accept something so preposterous. There was always a fear that your reality as a researcher was in peril. However, the data right in front of her proved that the results of the tests were correct. She was watching a person who could freely control his energy at max level at all times. If someone had 10 times as much energy as him, they would still not be able to beat him. With this fact in front of her, Mellies could not be blamed for feeling such fear. Mellies was usually a calm researcher, but she was now at the height of confusion. However, the fighter within her remained calm, and was telling her to escape as quickly as possible. At this point, Mellies had already abandoned Godama. If anything, she was already thinking how this sacrifice, called Godama, would distract Diablo and give her time to leave. And so without further delay, and without seeing the end of Godama's fate, she started to make her leave. That is why she didn't notice. She had been the one who was monitoring him, and yet, a demon with bright red pupils was looking up through the screen with an evil grin. Mellies' fate had been decided the moment she made an enemy of Diablo. Mellies was afraid of being followed, and so she was extra careful while fleeing. To Mellies, Godama was not so much a respectable superior, but a pawn to be used. And so she had no regrets over betraying him. The only thing that was important to her now was that she protect herself and run to a place of safety. She had to share this newly acquired information with the others. And now that they knew where Magnus and the others were, it would be bad if she didn't contact them. Because of all these thoughts, Mellies was full of anxiety. Still, she was able to calm herself and act carefully because she was a first-rate warrior. It was late in the night when she finally arrived at the secret hideout of the Reformists. Mellies was so worn out that she looked like a different person in just one day. The people that greeted her realized that something must have happened, and they ran to her with pale faces. Mellies, what happened? What is going on? Mellies stopped them with a raise of her hand before opening her mouth. Headmaster Godama has been caught by Diablo. He may even be dead now. As our rules demand, I prioritized the sharing of information and fled instead of rescuing him. She paused with a sigh. What? So then Godama is, how did this happen? How are things now? They asked her excitedly. And just as Mellies was about to open her mouth again, silence. came a shout from one of the people in charge. It was a group of glory knights in their white robes. They were the strongest of the Humanity Emancipation Alliance. There were some who were a part of the accommodationists and moderates, but the majority of them sided with the reformists. After all, it had been the results of Godama and Mellies' research that had allowed them to devise ways to fuse demons and control them. Furthermore, Mellies herself was one of the glory knights, and also had a demon dwelling within her. In a way, it could be said that Mellies herself had given the glory knights the power of the demons and made them powerful. Mellies. How did this happen, with you there? One of the knights asked Mellies. The others seemed to have calmed down now that the glory knights were present, and so they decided to listen to what she had to say. Mellies nodded and explained to them the events of the day. All right, I will tell you. But first, at least 2 people must guard the door. We cannot be too careful. They obeyed her order and 2 knights stood by the door. Mellies was very relieved by this and so began to talk. The truth is, she told them that they had been contacted by Magnus, who had been missing that morning. According to a message from the great demon Lord Rimuru, Magnus and the others were supposed to be in the middle of training. And yet it was said that they had attacked teachers from the other schools and the students as well. In other words, Magnus and the others did not know that they were being monitored by the great demon Lord. But as they had already acted, there was no turning back now. They had been trying to contact him to abandon his position as not only a student, but the entire plan and run away as soon as possible. And it was then that Diablo visited. In any case, if it was discovered that the students had accomplices, then the school's management would come into question. Both the headmaster and Mellies assumed that they would be replaced. And so they had decided to be rid of Diablo while his guard was down, before he realized that they were his enemies. Diablo. You tried to, how reckless, the audience muttered with shock. Diablo's reputation was known far and wide. He represented a kind of terror that exceeded even the great demon Lord Rimuru. Yes, I will not deny it now. But when I measured his energy, it was only at 7,000. I assumed we could easily kill him with the destroyers hidden underground. 13 destroyers should not be able to be defeated by someone who is at 7,000. Did you make a mistake when trapping him? No, he fell right into the trap. He was in the absolute magic space. The situation was to our advantage. And yet, we could not win. Impossible, they were utterly defeated. Diablo came out without a scratch. They all gasped. This report was so shocking that they did not want to believe it. Mellies continued, as if to dispel the oppressive air. It's true that Diablo's power was stronger than what we imagined. The accommodationists are not worth discussing, but the moderates did have a point about being against hostilities. I understand that now. He saw my face, but the rest of you who have not made contact, it's not too late, you should join the moderates. I cannot allow that. All of you are to be arrested right here. Mellies' words were interrupted by a cold, echoing voice. Who is it? The person who answered Mellies was a single man who stood in front of the door. The dark skin and blue hair, it was Suey. Humph. There's no need for you to know, but I will be polite this once. My name is Suey. One of Lord Rimuru's faithful servants. Suey said in answer to Mellies. Tisk, what happened to the guards? Mellies looked around frantically. Their mouths had been sealed before being made unconscious on the floor. And not one person in the room had noticed. It was done silently. Damn it. Mellies cursed inwardly. She had been so careful about being tracked. This was the worst possible thing that could happen now. Do not panic. Glory Knights, prepare for demon fusion. There is no future for us unless we defeat him first. Roused by these words, the Glory Knights started to act. They called the demons within them and made the power their own. With such comrades surrounding her, Mellies told herself that it wasn't too late. The enemy was alone. And there were 5 of the Glory Knights here. Diablo was one of the 12 guardians of the great demon king. But they had never even heard of this Suey before. They could win. This single demon could not stand against them. That's what Mellies thought. No, that's what she tried to believe. She could never have imagined that the person standing in front of them now was the equal of the guardians. In spite of her instincts raising the highest alarm in her head, Mellies made the worst decision. Go hostile, immediately. 5 Glory Knights stood in front of Suey. However, they did not act against him. No, they were not able to. What? I cannot move my body. What's happening? Damn it. What the hell? The knights realized the change and became frantic. But there was no answer coming, and Mellies was left confused, unable to understand the situation. The only person here who grasped everything was Suey. And Suey did nothing. He had no need to. Because. Suey, would you like me to finish them for you? Out of nowhere, a woman had arrived and stood in front of Suey. The beautiful Drago nude, Suka. Don't let a single one get away. Certainly. Tuka, Saika, Hokuso, and Nansa were also there. This hideout had already been completely surrounded by the information department working for Suey. Damn it! The Glory Knights shouted. However, their shouts faded into the air. To Suka and the others, these knights, who had merely overcome the barrier of A rank, were nothing. Besides. Well then, I think it's time we take our leave. The greater demons that had been fused with the knights now attempted to escape. Wait. Do you mean to ignore the contract? The knights shouted in horror. But the demons snorted. Fool. Our contracts are voided if we are not able to run wild as we please. So saying, they began to escape. Unlike spirits, demons tended to be self-centered. And so they often abandoned their masters the moment that the situation became unfavorable. However, this time alone, the demons were unable to avoid the disaster. Do you really think I will let you get away? Suey said that I was to let no one escape. Suka's cold voice rang in the room. What? How? But it was too late for the greater demons. Because now the entire building was surrounded by a magic circle of envelopment that isolated the place. I have no use for those demons. Kill them so they can repent for a few hundred years. Yes. And so the demons were dealt with just as Suey ordered. Before the demons could even say anything, Suka and the others had turned them into dust. It all happened in an instant. The members of the Humanity Emancipation Alliance were speechless. Some of them fell weakly to the floor while others moaned audibly. Seeing the greater demons disposed of like this had made them certain about their fate. Mellies as well. It's over. Great Demon Lord Rimuru's subordinates are so. Magnus, I am so sorry, they were strong on a level that defied her understanding. Like Godama, Mellies now realized that she had come in contact with something that should have been avoided at all cost. But it was much too late now. And there was no way for them to get out of this. That was enough to break her spirit. And like that, majority of the reformist members fell at the hand of Suey. Phew. So it is done, Suey, yes. Thanks to you scaring them out of the nest, I was able to find them all gathered together. That is wonderful. I too was able to capture one of the leaders. And don't worry, I treated him very carefully and without killing him. Humph. I'll be the judge of that. Suey brushed this comment aside. In fact, he thought it would not have been a problem to kill one or two of them. No mercy for our enemies. It was an unspoken rule, and Rimuru was not likely to be angry about it. The only reason he hadn't related this to Diablo was because it was too much trouble. Besides, there would be no stopping Diablo once he went out of control. And so it was best to avoid the possibility altogether. Especially since he would likely be given the role of having to stop him. And Suey did not care to be bothered with that. Even now he is being eaten by demon bugs. Can you hear his gleeful screams? Diablo said as he threw the tree-like thing off of his shoulder. It was a ravaged Godama. His entire body was being eaten by bugs and he was barely breathing. Of course, Godama's fate was more than that. The places that were being eaten were slowly turning into tree bark. He helped me. It hurts. My whole body hurts. In this pitiful state, he pleaded for mercy. However, Diablo did not respond to his pleas. Hey, while he is alive, there will be little point if he loses his mind, you know. Suey said. Diablo nodded as if he understood this perfectly. Phew. Don't worry. These Majuju do not eat the brain. And they excrete two kinds of liquids when eating flesh. One has the effect of turning the host into a tree. The other is a pleasure substance. This means that while they can feel pain, it is not so bad that they would lose their minds. Besides, he had something that was perfect. So saying, Diablo pointed to the staff that was practically a part of Godama now. It was the unique magic rod that Godama had carried for many years, the staff of heart protection. Due to Godama's excellent equipment, his heart was protected, preventing him from going mad. I see. Well, he did insult Lord Rimuru. So it is his own fault. Diablo nodded with satisfaction at Suey's words. And then in a rare display of affection, Diablo slapped Suey on the shoulder and said, "Very good, Suey. I am so glad that you have an understanding of my hobbies." "No. I'm not saying your hobbies are acceptable." Suey had a bitter expression, a strong contrast to the one of pleasure that was on Diablo's face. However, Diablo did not mind. He laughed happily at the prospect of having someone who was of kindred spirit. And with that, they left the rest to Suka and the others, and headed for their final destination. Maldoland Island. The place where their beloved Rimuru was. So guys, that's it for today. Which character is your favorite after Rimuru and Diablo? Comment below. Thank you.